Hi guys, Olive here today to talk about my most anticipated book releases coming out in July, August, and September 2026. This is always the most fun stretch of the year to put a video like this together for because everything builds up to the month of September. And if you don't know anything about the book industry, that is typically when the biggest, buzziest books of the entire year hit shelves. It's basically sweeps week. Except it lasts an entire month and it's books. Looking at my list as a whole, though, we have got some great books to look forward to. It seems like I'm just being drawn toward things that are a little bit smart, a little bit strange, a little bit hard to explain. You'll see what I mean as we go along. Let's take a look at the books. Kicking off this list with July releases. On July 7th, there are 2 books coming out that feel very on brand with what I like and what I've been vibing with lately. The first one is called Scavenging Beauty, a memoir in walks by Angelica Glass. This one feels perfect for this time of year. It was really cold for a while there, but the weather finally turned. It is seasonably warm outside. We are now firmly in go outside and take a walk season. This memoir was written by a woman who set out to walk every single street in Santa Cruz County, California over the course of several years. And as she did that, she was also sort of working through her very difficult past. Her childhood was rife with abuse, addiction, instability, and it seems like the act of walking helped her move through that. And that core idea that the physical act of movement can be a way of processing something much bigger in your life really resonated with me. I myself have fallen in love with exercise and movement over the past few years, gone through my own physical transformation, and so on and so forth. So I am intimately familiar with the fact that movement and exercise can be its own form of therapy. The other July 7th release I wanted to highlight is called Miss Bates, Emma Revisited by Catherine Cliff. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a reimagining of Jane Austen's Emma, but told through the perspective of Miss Bates. If you've read Emma, you likely remember Miss Bates. She's the chatty, overlooked, somewhat pitiable neighbor of Emma's family. But this book poses a really interesting question. It wonders if that personality is a persona that Miss Bates is putting on in order to survive. This is being pitched as less of a marriage plot that we know Jane Austen for, and much more of a spinster plot. I've never heard that advertised as a formula before, but I am definitely down to read it. And it was also a really fun coincidence seeing an entire book dedicated to the humble Miss Bates because not long ago I made a video in which I focused on 2 books on Jane Austen's side characters. And in one of those books, Miss Bates is heavily featured. It's actually really nice to see her getting so much love lately. Moving on to July 14th, there is a trio of books coming out that I'm really excited about. The first one is called The Half-Life by Rachel Beanland, which is by the author of Florence Adler Swims Forever, which is a novel that I really loved. This new novel is set on a small Italian island during the Cold War. We follow a young Navy wife who moves to this island with her husband, only to find herself caught between her loyalty to her husband and her growing concerns about nuclear contamination and the American military presence on that island. This sounds a little bit political, a little bit romantic, very atmospheric. I already have a lot of trust in this author, so I have high hopes for it. Next up is The Devoted by Catherine Cho, who is also the author of a memoir called Inferno. It was all about her experience going through postpartum psychosis. And that book still haunts me to this day. So I am definitely very interested to read this, her first novel. This novel follows a young Korean woman raised in Hong Kong whose father is a leader in the triads, meaning organized crime. She has tried really hard to build a life separate from that world, but she finds herself pulled back into it when her son is kidnapped. This has the potential to be extraordinary, especially if her style translates from that standout memoir to a work of fiction. Closing out this trio is a memoir with a highly emotional sounding premise. It's called The Solo Honeymoon by Laura Murphy. And in this book, the author, with the help of a co-writer, reflects on how, after her fiancé died just weeks before their wedding, she decided she would still go on their planned honeymoon to Europe, except she went completely alone. navigating her own grief and her memories of their relationship, this one definitely has the potential to tug on the heartstrings. There's just one new release I wanted to highlight that comes out on July 21st, and that's called Lost in Curiosity: Field Notes from Scientists' Adventures into the Unknown by Roberta Kwok. This is a nonfiction book that gives us a glimpse into what scientific discovery actually looks like, because it's normally not neat and tidy breakthroughs, but instead the result of messy, unpredictable, often highly frustrating work done out in the field and in the lab. So for instance, this book follows researchers trekking across glaciers, searching for elusive animals, trying to capture signals from distant moons. It seems like it's going to have that adventure meets science writing flavor that I really enjoy from writers like Mary Roach. Speaking of animals, though, the last new release Tuesday in July is the 28th. It will bring us 2 novels, including The Night Hunter by Natalie Moss, which is a survival thriller set on a South African game reserve. This book follows 2 estranged sisters who return to their childhood home following their mother's death. But what's supposed to be a short trip quickly spirals into chaos when someone in their group is murdered and they're left stranded out in the wilderness. I've heard early reviewers call this one immersive, positively nerve-shredding. It's almost as if the landscape itself is another character. And I don't know about you, but that is precisely the kind of claustrophobic, page-turning thriller that I want to be reading this summer. The other novel that comes out on the 28th, though, is very much on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's a much more internal, cerebral novel called The Obsessed by Lizzie Bueller. And in this book, we follow a PhD student who becomes deeply fixated on a novelist whose work seems to mirror her own life. And it's to the point where this student starts shaping her own relationships, including those within her love life, around that narrative. This one just sounds very psychologically sharp. I'll be very interested to see how this author plays with themes of identity and the way that we all use stories to make sense of our own lives. Moving into August releases, the 4th will bring us a very interesting mix of books, including The Seekers of Deer Creek by Tao Tai. This is also the author of Banyan Moon, which I know got a lot of attention when it was released in 2023. Estranged sisters must be having a moment in the publishing industry because this book focuses on 2 more of them, except this pair of sisters come back together following their father's death because they are searching for a missing Vietnamese painting that they believe might hold the key to their family's past. A sweeping, slightly mysterious family story paired with art. Those are 2 elements that normally add up to a winning book for me, so that's why this one landed on my list. Also coming out on that day is The Wound is Where the Light Enters by Chris Young, which is a memoir about resilience and self-education under incredibly difficult circumstances. After being sentenced to life in prison at the very young age of 22, this author essentially built an entire education for himself from scratch, studying everything from philosophy to physics. He even taught himself how to code without a computer. It seems like this book emphasizes the power of mindset and the power of sticking with things. It's less about a single moment of transformation and more about that sustained effort over time. I think this book really has the potential to be the type of memoir that really stays with me. And then the final August 4th release I wanted to mention is called I Have This Thing for Flowers by Alicia Lee Yang Salchin, which is a very unique collection of essays that all focus on love and relationships and all the different forms that those things can take. The collection begins with the author discussing a breakup followed by a marriage of convenience that slowly morphed into something real. And throughout, she talks about her life through gardening, using flowers as metaphors, which definitely perked my ears up because after many delays because of far too many cold snaps this spring, I finally got my garden planted. But I also was definitely intrigued because it seems like she also weaves in references to other things like Greek mythology. We're skipping ahead 2 weeks to August 18th. And speaking of Greek mythology, I am very very excited to see Mothers of Invention, A History of Creativity from the Greek Muses by Moya McTeer hit shelves. This is a nonfiction book that looks at the history of human creativity, except it's told through the perspective of the Greek Muses, which I thought was a really fun angle. It moves through art, science, and history, showing how human creativity has shaped everything from major inventions to cultural movements. And I like that this author is really making a point to de-emphasize the idea of a lone genius, and instead she underscores the importance of collaboration and shared inspiration. This is also the same author who helped me wrap my head at least somewhat around astrophysics in her last book, which was called The Milky Way. I reviewed it here on my channel in case you're interested in that book as well. I will link it for you below and up in the cards. I really enjoyed that book, so I'm excited to see what she has up her sleeve in this one. Also due to come out on that day is The Song of Stork and Dromedary by Anya and Danya. This is a Dutch novel being translated into English for the very first time. This book seems like a little bit of a literary puzzle. It all centers on this reclusive writer who only published one book in her lifetime, and that book takes on a life of its own following the author's death. And then we follow a different cast of characters from across generations who all together are trying to piece together who this author really was. From what I've seen about this book, it seems like it blends Gothic elements with philosophy, even a touch of science thrown in there. I've heard it be described as intricate, ambitious, even a little bit mind-bending. I adore books that ask something of us as readers, and I doubly love authors as characters, so this is directly up my alley, even if it is over 700 pages long. Closing out the month of August, I've got two more releases, both out on the 25th, and both pretty tailor-made for me specifically. The first one is called Notes of Deception: How a Quartet of American Musicians Outwitted the KGB by Meryl Goldberg and Vince Houghton. This is some seriously niche historical nonfiction that tells the story of how four American musicians who traveled to the Soviet Union during the Cold War used their sheet music to pass information right under the nose of the KGB. This is definitely one of those the truth is stranger than fiction types of stories. I mean, you've got music, espionage, Cold War politics. If this doesn't get turned into a film or a TV miniseries, I will be shocked. The other August 25th release is probably the book I am most excited about in this entire quarter, even though it's not a September release. It is The Whitechapel Full Moon Society by Elizabeth Delazier. And if you have no idea why I'm so excited about this, it's because this is by the author of Eleanor of Avignon, my favorite novel of 2024, one of my favorite novels of all time now. Her new book is set in London in 1888 as Jack the Ripper is on the loose. It stars a young woman who takes a job at a mysterious boarding house while also searching for her missing brother. That setup alone is intriguing, but I have also heard that this book incorporates some supernatural elements. There is an eccentric cast of characters, tons of secrets bubbling underneath the surface. Her last book completely swept me away, and I am really hoping for a repeat here. But now onto the month of September, which, like I said at the start of this video, is definitely publishing's biggest month of the entire year. And there are some very well-known names dropping books in this final month of the quarter, and we're going to start with one of them. Chloe Benjamin. Her novel, The Immortalist, was a huge hit when it was released in 2018, and on September 1st, she will be back with Understory. This novel is set, at least in part, in Antarctica, where we follow a biologist who has more or less disappeared from her former life. She's working at this remote research station, but when a mysterious phenomenon happens out on the ice, it pulls her back into both scientific discovery and memories of her own past, especially when her ex-husband re-enters the picture. I'll admit it, I didn't love The Immortalist as much as everyone else seemed to back in the day. I said as much in the review video I made of it when it came out. Yes, I have in fact been on BookTube that long, but I have much higher hopes for this one because the premise actually reminds me a lot more of her debut novel, which was called The Anatomy of Dreams. I loved that book. I've never been able to stop thinking about it. So I'm thinking I may need to buy an early ticket aboard the hype train for this one. The other September 1st release I wanted to highlight leans heavily into what will be, at the time, the back-to-school season. It's The Oxford Guide to Scandal and Lies by Kate Westbury. This book is set in 1950s Oxford, and it stars two very different students who are both recruited by British intelligence to track down a Soviet spy suspected to be operating within the university following a suspicious poisoning. Like Notes of Deception, we've got the espionage thing going on, some romance, a little bit of mystery, campus angle thrown in there as well. These are all things that I like. And I am still desperately on the hunt for something to fill the Ashley Weaver-shaped hole in my life. I need a cozy mystery series to be invested in. My life is worse without one. Maybe this will do the trick. A few weeks later, on September 22nd, another big-name author is going to be releasing a new book, Naomi Alderman. Her novel, The Power, to put it mildly, was a massive success when it came out. I swear everyone was reading that. It went on to win the Women's Prize for Fiction, and now she's back with something that frankly sounds more than a little bizarre, but it could be great if it's done well. I hear The Strangers begins with the appearance of these new, very odd creatures. They're these low to the ground, almost badger-like animals that just seem to be showing up everywhere. And alongside that storyline, we're also following a version of Naomi Alderman herself. She's worked into this novel, and she's dealing with grief after her mother's death, and she begins to feel like she has some sort of a connection to these creatures. It seems like this book is going to blend speculative fiction, which Alderman is known for, with something a lot more personal. I've already heard this be called unsettling and emotionally raw. It's definitely the type of story where you just have to buy into the absurd premise and see where it takes you. So unless I start hearing from other readers that this is not a good book, I'm down for the ride. The other September 22nd release I wanted to talk about, though, is also a bit, we'll say, offbeat. It's called Incarnate by Alma Katsu. This is a modern reimagining of The Picture of Dorian Gray. So just imagine that iconic premise, but transplanted into the world of social media and deepfake technology. Our main character is a woman who creates a virtual influencer, this impossibly beautiful online persona who quickly gains millions of followers. But as that success continues to grow, so does our main character's inability to separate herself from her creation. I don't tend to pick up a lot of horror. It's not really my thing, but that Dorian Gray hook absolutely pulled me in. I am a huge fan of Oscar Wilde, as evidenced by my favorite classics video I made not too long ago. I love the idea that the plot of the Victorian classic could be repurposed to expose the darker side of internet culture. I am so excited to read this, and I also know that this author is based in West Virginia. So I am crossing my fingers that Pittsburgh might be a stop on her book tour. We are going to close out the month of September and this list as a whole with what seems to be one of the biggest release dates of this entire quarter, the 29th. I know there are a lot of John Boyne fans out there, and get this, his new novel, The Weight of Angels, also focuses on Oscar Wilde, legend that he is. This is going to be a historical novel that imagines an alternate life for the famous author and playwright, one where he doesn't go to prison, doesn't fall into disgrace, and instead lives into the 20th century and experiences all the changes that come along with that. I love that what-if angle to this book, but I know it is going to make me desperately sad that things didn't turn out differently for Oscar Wilde. But I told you September 29th is a heavy hitter release date because we're also getting Ply by Hernan Diaz, the follow-up to Trust, a novel I don't think I could have loved more. This new book moves us into the future, and we follow a young woman living in a type of post-state society where electricity has essentially become currency, and she survives by illegally siphoning off electricity and selling it on the black market. In the name of full disclosure, I hate this cover. It feels illegible to me. Like, if you don't already know the title, how are you supposed to read it from this? I am so confused that this is the best they could do, especially after Trust, which had a gorgeous cover. But in any event, Hernan Diaz himself has earned my trust. And I'm actually very curious to see what he does with something that feels very dystopian. But the third September 29th release on my list does have a cover I find easy on the eyes. It's called Beyond the Graves Waits Mist and Sea by Kathleen Kaufman, which follows a marine biologist who is traveling to an island off the coast of Boston in search of a potentially undiscovered species of octopus. But once she arrives, things take a turn toward the strange and possibly supernatural. It sounds moody, immersive, maybe a little bit eerie, just the perfect vibe as we head into the fall. And rounding out this batch of upcoming releases is The Vanishing Family, Love, Fate, and the Quest to End Dementia by Robert Kolker. This is a nonfiction book that introduces a family affected by a rare genetic mutation that causes an early onset form of dementia. And this book traces their own family story, but also talks about the grander scientific effort to understand and hopefully treat this disease. I read and reviewed Kolker's last book, Hidden Valley Road, here on my channel after it came out. I thought that book was really impressive. So I have every confidence that he will handle this heartbreaking but ultimately optimistic story with that same kind of care. So that was a look at my most anticipated new releases of the third quarter of 2026. Let me know which of these most caught your attention, or if there are any on your radar that I didn't mention in this video. I would love to know about them. Not like I need more books to put on my never-ending TBR, but that's never stopped me before. If you want to check out or even pre-order any of the books I spoke about in this video, I have listed and linked all of them for you in the description box below. And also in the description box, I've put links to the videos I made about the previous 2 quarters of 2026 in case you missed those videos, or if you want to revisit them now that all of those books are out in the world. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.